Hi, and now welcome to part 2. The family atmosphere is affected by parents' own relationship. That's the levels of conflict that might exist, their conflict style. The parenting and conflict style with their children will also look at the role of siblings and peers. So if we start with brothers and sisters, these could be, friends or foes and teachers. The significant difference between firstborn and later-born children in outcomes such as educational achievement and income. Firstborn in the family is typically advantaged. Later-born children receive less quality time with parents. Now again, the emphasis is on the research that's been done has started out fairly narrow and has been getting broader, so we're learning more things in regards to this. Older siblings partly replace parents in providing some of this quality time, which benefits firstborn because they have the opportunity to be the teacher from on at an early age. Now, lone children have many of the characteristics of firstborns with siblings. Given that the sibling relationship is obligatory, brothers and sisters must learn how to resolve conflict issues. Can also be great warmth and affection between brothers and sisters. Sibling relationships can be one of the most enduring in a person's life and have store of memories in common with one another. If parents treat siblings as a single group without any individual qualities, meaning, the kids, children engage in more rivalry and conflict. Now, what about impact of parents on sibling relationship? And I'm going to touch on this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but spanking is probably less effective in changing children's behavior than non-violent forms of discipline. I spent a lot of years as a behavior consultant, and I can support that position very strongly. Conflict between parents increase risk that children will have adjustment problems. Parents' use of destructive tactics, yelling, name-calling, threatening, withdrawal of resources distress children dramatically. Children may feel more threatened by disagreements and are more likely to blame themselves for the parents' problems than those whose parents use more constructive tactics to resolve conflict. The amount of conflict between parents and teenagers relates to the parents' warmth and supportiveness. If hostile and authoritarian, conflict tends to escalate. If supportive, family relations improve over the teen's years. Now, one of the other elements of family that often just sort of gets glossed over is that about routines, rituals, and traditions. These are usually involving little conscious thought and occur frequently, often daily. Rituals are events that tell families, this is who we are. The we versus them. Our family operates this way, your family operates that way, and we have this barrier that says, this is our family, that's your family. Family stories of tradition help shape children. What do we celebrate? How do we celebrate it? And when do we celebrate it? Now, we can include in this variations. Diversity in parenting is our next section, and we're going to consider different groups in Canada. Indigenous families strongly emphasize the interdependence of all life and have a strong sense of spirituality. Traditional Indigenous societies recognize the basic family unit of parents and children living together, but family also includes this broad network of grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. From about 1890 to around 1970, many Indigenous children were removed from their families and placed in residential schools, and this, of course, has a profound effect on Indigenous children and families, not only needing to reconnect and reestablish family and family ties, but to relearn what is family for them. Children in immigrant families, they may be pulled between two cultural ideals. That with their attitudes, between the cultural ideals with their attitudes raising concerns among their own family. In North American society encourages independence and spontaneity, whereas many other cultures, such as Chinese and South Asians, expect children to be much more focused on their families and respectful of their elders. Immigrant parents typically hold different expectations for their children than Canadian-born parents do. Preserving their cultural heritage and language and passing it on to their children is important. In comparison, the Euro-American parents, Chinese parents, tend to have more authoritarian parenting style, which tends to have a positive outcome for Chinese children versus Euro-American children. One possible explanation is that while Chinese parents are more likely to focus on negative traits, they also emphasize that these can be improved upon through work and effort. Now, children with challenges. Every family has different variables, but some families have children with disabilities, and having a brother or sister with exceptionalities also affects the family socialization. There must be some adjustments and changes in the family rhythms as parents pay more attention to that child with the exceptionalities. Brothers and sisters, especially sisters, may be expected to help with childcare and may be asked to include siblings in social activities. Some youngsters feel they must make up for what the sibling cannot achieve. Now, society at large, the bigger part of society, since family is one of many primary agents of socialization of children, there are other agents of socialization. As I mentioned in the introduction, childcare is being one. Young children in full-time childcare typically spend 9 hours a day, 250 days a year away from their parents. So nearly half of Canadian children are cared for by a non-relative receiving informal home care. Children in high-quality care are readier for school and have better social skills, especially true for children of mothers with low levels of education. Now, I've touched on just briefly school. Children of all age from 4 to 5 spend large blocks of their time at school, which takes over much of the socialization process. Children learn to interact with new authority figures and children of their own age. It's one of the first times in kindergarten and daycare that they become aware that they're not the only needy person in the world. Now, the sense of belonging is undermined by ethnic prejudice among students and school staff. A big impact of these achievements can be affected by what is known as teacher expectations. A teacher expectancy effect. The impact of teacher expectation on student academic performance. So if I have a high expectation of what I think everybody's capable of doing, then I might influence your grade, and therefore I've achieved that support of my own notion about you were bright and I graded you accordingly, but it's done unconsciously, and that's why that's hard to grasp a hold of. Another group that has a profound impact on our socialization is peers. Parents have more power over a child's peers when the children are young. This control grows less as children become older. Now, the neighborhood parents choose to live in and degree to which they supervise children helps shapes child's peer networks. As children become older, the peer group assumes greater importance in their lives. When children are rejected or ridiculed by peers, they may become isolated and antisocial. Often parents think of the peer relationship as negative and blame friends for being bad influences. Peers can make up for some of the child's negative experiences at home, and therefore can be quite positive in shaping who a child is. One really big emerging agent, one that's been around maybe the last 20 to 25 years if you consider social media and the internet, but prior to that, TV, magazines, newspapers, and radio. The media are important socializing agents. Television, video games, computers, other technologies such as cell phones and tablets. Many young people devote more time to media than to any other activity except sleep. The explosion of social networking sites are both increasing connections among people and reducing privacy. Young people are more likely to use the internet than older people, although that's starting to change. And whether media has a good or bad influence on children depends greatly on their age and their families. Parents have an important role in enabling and monitoring their children's use of media. There's a term that's known as the digital divide. And among families with higher and lower access to internet and technology, partly related to income. Parents and older siblings can help youngsters learn from and about media through their explanations and comments. Unfortunately, many parents don't make time to do this with their children. Now we're going to touch on is children and parental happiness. Now, as we know, everybody has unique experiences. However, what is reported in the text is research-based and populations rather than of individuals. We will all have our individual awareness about happiness or non-happiness. This is about the bigger picture, not just our own personal, but global, bigger groups of populations. So the greatest happiness for a parent is often around as you would expect, the birth of their child. And this can change as all of life's expectations kick in, and the relationship can take a bit of a hit, especially if both parents work. Your sleep is interrupted, communication lines get frayed and tested, intimacy and sexual relations can suffer. Parents experience the most stress when their children are teenagers. Some trepidation still occurs as our children prepare to leave home, or as it's known as, launching. However, we're going to look at this period of time in the family's life in week 7, chapter 7, which is the middle years of the family and not so empty nest. Well, I hope this has been helpful for you. That's the completion of the chapter on bringing up baby. Next week, we're going to look at the midlife of the family and the not so empty nest. Bye now.